Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Darin and I'm here with one of my many post-E3 reports, and this one's going to be about the new offerings from Logitech. The G29 that's going to work on the PC, PS3, and PS4, and the G920 that will be available for the PC and Xbox One. I'm going to cover both of them on this show because they're pretty much identical except for button placement, and I got to drive them with the Xbox One, PS4, and PC. It's been 6 long years since the launch of the G27 in 2009. It was available for the PS3 and the PC. Logitech had announced a while back that they were pulling out of the console market and were not going to be developing any new hardware for the consoles. Well, I guess they changed their minds because they're back now on both new gen systems. The Logitech meeting room was the first stop on my E3 tour, and I met up with Chris Pate, who is the Logitech project manager, and I've met him a few times over the years. Great guy, and it was great to see him again to talk shop. So let's start things off with some pricing and specs. Both wheels will retail for $399, and neither come with the optional driving force shifter that will have a suggested retail price of $59.99. I am not sure if the G27 shifter is compatible. I forgot to ask, but I will find out for my full review. The G29 will be available in July, while the G920 sometime later this year. You are able to pre-order either setup from the Logitech site with free shipping. Both wheels feature a dual motor force feedback transmission with anti-backlash helical gearing and a hand-stitched leather rim. Both come with the very familiar G27 style pedal sets, but now have a rubber bumper type modification to add some progression to your braking. I was also told that they now use Hall effect sensors, and I assume they meant for pedal functionality, but we'll find out more again for my full review. The G29 has the familiar shift/rev lights that the G27 have. The G920 does not have that option. Both have the same paddle shifters that we've become familiar with on the G27. The G29 rim is now a combination of the Driving Force GT, otherwise known as the DFGT, and the G27. It has a D-pad, the standard PS button layout including the X, square, triangle, circle, plus the 4 left and right bumper buttons. It has the 24-point selection dial and the plus/minus buttons that we saw on the DFGT. It also has the share option and PS4 button, all located on the rim. So if you include the plus/minus selector, on the PC you will have 13 buttons you can map plus the dial. The G920 has a D-pad, the Xbox One button layout with the A, B, X, Y buttons, LSB and RSB buttons, back and start, as well as the Xbox button. So on the PC you would only have 9 buttons compared to 13 on the G29. Both will support up to 900 degrees of rotation. So now on to some initial impressions. Again, I mentioned I drove them on all 3 different systems. I drove the G920 on the Xbox One with Project Cars. Then I drove the G29 on the PS4 with Drive Club and Project Cars on the PC. All 3 were connected to Playseat chassis. My impressions were pretty much the same across the board in regards to performance on all 3 systems. They all feel pretty much identical to the G27 in regards to force feedback and performance. The wheel rim is now D-shaped, but the leather feels the same as what you find on a G27. The feel of the buttons were similar to how they feel on the DFGT. Then on the PC in Project Cars, I noticed that it was recognized as a G27 in the Project Cars menus, so I'm assuming they're using the current G27 driver right now. The pedals have the same feel and spacing as the G27 pedals, but now have the additional brake mod that felt really similar to having a Nixon mod if you're familiar with it. And basically, the Nixon mod had a square urethane or piece of rubber that you stuck inside the unit, inside the brake pedal, to create some progression. Definitely feels better than a stock G27 brake. And finally, the shifter, it felt identical to the G27 shifter, except for it didn't have the D-pad and the buttons. So the way it looks to me is that they are taking the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, basically by upgrading the G27 in a few ways and adding the full compatibility to the PS4 and for the 920, the Xbox One. So it looks like, in my opinion, they just wanted to add full compatibility to both those consoles versus going the route that Fnatic and Thrustmaster have, Thrustmaster with the T500, by getting the software developers to add compatibility for those wheels on the PS4. And Fnatic's now on the Xbox One as well. I know on the PS4, like with the T500, you can't use any of the functionality of the wheel, and the PS button does not work in native PlayStation 4 menus. Once you go in the game, everything works fine, but you have to use a D-pad to get into the game. So it looks like to me, Logitech didn't want to add compatibility with, say, the G27 to the PS4. They wanted full compatibility. So, in all honesty, it seems like that whole security chip debacle was kind of a farce. And I don't know if it was Sony that was saying it or Logitech, but the bottom line is you can use the Thrustmaster T500 and pretty much all Fanatic wheels on the PS4 with Project Cars. Slightly Mad added compatibility, or coded compatibility, into Project Cars to use those wheels. So why Logitech didn't do it for the G27, I don't know. I'm assuming just because they knew they were developing these wheels and they were going to have full compatibility with the PS4 and the Xbox One. Xbox One I can understand. Logitech never had a wheel that worked on the Xbox One unless you used a converter, and I used one briefly on the Xbox 360. I didn't like the way it felt, and from what I've read and heard, it's the same way on the Xbox One. You can use the Logitech G27, but it just doesn't feel right. We'd like to hear your take on this whole situation, and tell us in the comments here, on our Facebook page, Twitter, or at the ISR TV forums. We'd like to hear your take on Logitech's new wheels for the new gen consoles, and why you think they didn't add that or have, let's say, Slightly Mad or one of the other developers, Codemasters for instance. They're coming out with F1 2015. Why didn't they just have them code for the G27? Again, my opinion was because they were developing the G29 and the G920, and they want you to buy their new wheel. So I wish I had more to say about both units, but I didn't have much time to drive them, and they did feel good in Project Cars on both the Xbox One and the PC. But as you know, if you've tried Project Cars, there are an infinite amount of adjustments, and the default settings that they had in there felt good, but I definitely would have wanted to spend some time getting things dialed in. And on the Xbox One, I want to try it with Forza 5, Forza 6 coming up, Forza Horizon. I would like to try it with F1 2015 when it's available, which will be next month. On the PS4, I drove it with Drive Club. I'd like to try it with Project Cars, F1 2015 again when it's available. I just like to try it with a lot more than just Drive Club. Drive Club, it felt really good, but I just wanted to get more out of it. And on PC, I want to try it with iRacing, Assetto Corsa. So I really want to be able to put it through its paces before I give you my full opinion. But the bottom line, it felt across the board really similar to a G27. So I hope you've enjoyed my first look and impressions of the Logitech G29 and G920. I'd like to thank Chris Pate at Logitech for giving me some time on both wheels, and it was great to see him again, like I'd mentioned. And from what I understand, they're going to be sending me a wheel to review, and hopefully I'll have it before launch in late July. I think like right around the 20th or so is when the G29 will be available. G920, they didn't have a date. They were saying hopefully fall, but looks like sometime later this year. So stay tuned here to Inside Sim Racing for more E3 coverage. A lot to come. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I'm Darin Ganji. See you guys next time.